In these uncertain economic times, it's easy to be worried about protecting your wealth, your hard-earned savings, and your family's financial future. Plunging interest rates, the devaluating dollar, and political unrest constantly threaten what you have worked hard to earn and all that you own. That's why now it's more important than ever to protect your assets and have the money you need to make your dreams come true. Welcome to the Global Wealth Fortress Report with successful global entrepreneur and wealth preservation expert Joel Nagel. Joel's helped thousands of people just like you protect what you have so that you can make even more and make your every dream come true. So, sit back and enjoy Joel Nagel's offshore expert advice on how you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.
Hello. This is Carol Carter Clues, and welcome to Joel Nagel's Global Wealth Fortress Report. Very, very important this week as the economy continues to be iffy at best. But we also want to talk about an area that Joel's expertise that a lot of people are asking me about: second passports. Should I get one? Should I not? So we're going to do three things: second passports, the economics, and then an update on President's Week 26. Joel, how are you there in chilly Vienna?
Hey, Carter, good to be with you. Actually, it's been a beautiful fall weather, but it is a little on the crisp side right now. It's probably in the upper 50s.
In the upper 50s. And I see you have your sweater on. I'm expecting you to say, welcome, have a wonderful day in the neighborhood. Here we go.
Well, I am from Pittsburgh, so I grew up with Mr. Rogers. And anyways, I wasn't trying particularly to look like him, but I'll take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment. We all love Mr. Rogers. Let's talk about three items on the Joel Nagel's website, folks. We're going to tackle a topic from the Knowledge Center here, which, Joel, I get a lot of questions about. Okay. And folks, you can go to the Knowledge Center, see the tab at the top, not right now, after we're done here, and get codified this before you get it in writing. But let's talk about a second passport. It's a topic that is always a big question to me because, as you know, I lived in Honduras for a year and a half and never had a second passport. But it seems to be a topic that a lot of Offshore Club members are very, very interested in. So on your Knowledge Center, you have the question: should I get a second passport? Two pros, two cons. Let's talk about the pros. The first one: the right to work and live in multiple countries. What's the story on a second passport, and why do you recommend it? That's the bottom line.
Well, look, I mean, I think the period we just went through with COVID was a stark reminder that even if you come from a country like the US or Canada, they both have great passports. You can travel to a lot of places. You don't need to get so many visas, but you can see that, you're still limited by that country, right? Whatever rules it has, whatever countries that country likes, whatever countries that country doesn't like, and beyond just the diplomatic, political relations, you have the ability, for example, to live places that you want, work places that you want, send your children to schools, places that you want. If you have any of the European passports, for example, you have the right not only to live in that country, but to live and work and spend time in any of the countries. So that's what makes those passports special. A lot of the Caribbean countries offer second passports, and when we say second passport programs, we're really distinguishing those from programs that may eventually lead to citizenship, right? I mean, you can go through the residency process in any country in the world. It's different in every country. Some have fast track for foreigners. If you invest, like the United States, for example, an EB-5 or an E-2 visa puts you on you get a green card, and then you're on a fast track to become a citizen. But some of these countries offer what they call instant citizenship programs. It's not really instant. It can take, 3 to 6 months. Generally, some of them are up to a year now. But, you go through a background check. You have to make some kind of investment, or in some cases, it's just a straight out payment or a contribution to that country that they use for, infrastructure, schools, roads, bridges, whatever. And, this used to be just the playground of the ultra rich. And recently there was an article in the paper about, I think it was about Peter Thiel and him acquiring citizenship in New Zealand, and now he's getting citizenship in Malta. He's originally German. He has American citizenship. So you hear about these folks that get a lot of citizenships. But when it comes to most of my clients, they really just want to have it as a plan B. It might be something they throw in their safety deposit box and never ever use. Right. It might be something that they decide, well, I really would like to get it, even if it maybe takes longer than an instant program. Like, some of these residency to citizenship programs take 5-6 years. But if you have the time on your side, you might want your children, for example, to be able to go to school in Europe or get a job there or live there or whatever. So, those are just some of the reasons that people decide that they want to get either second residencies or passports. The difference between the two is that with the second citizenship, you do have a passport. You can vote, you can do all the things that a citizen can do. With the residency card, you have the right to basically live there. And so they overlap, and sometimes the terminology is used intermittently, but there are also some important distinctions. You can't pass residency onto your children, but you can pass citizenship onto your children. So, there's nuances like that can make it important.
How about, all right. I like this because as someone who has 2 homes in Honduras, I think a lot about, should I get the residency? Should I get the citizenship? But in terms of the passport, and I'm going to ask a general question, which might require specific answers, but how hard is it for someone like me, let's say in Honduras, or let's say it was Belize or Nicaragua, how hard is it to get a second passport?
Well, that answer is very country specific.
Right.
Countries that really want to encourage, particularly what I would call instant citizenship programs. Those are the programs where you don't have to go through any kind of residency stage. You basically apply, you meet the investment or financial commitment, and as long as you're squeaky clean from a background check, then essentially you're in. And so for those types of programs, they make the requirements beyond whatever the major requirement is, which is normally investment, right? So if you take money, you're willing to pay the money or invest the money. Once you get past that step, then the instant citizenship programs are really pretty straightforward. You have to pass background checks, things like that. They generally don't have language requirements, which is something very common when you go through residency and then you want to convert to citizenship. I tell clients there's the fast, expensive way and the slow, cheap way. You can take your pick. The slow, cheap way, like if you move to Honduras and you get the residence and you stay there for 5 years and then you apply for citizenship, part of that transfer from residence to citizenship, you'll have to do a basic language exam. They're not going to expect you to be, completely proficient, but you're going to have to speak about the level of about a third grader to be able to qualify. And so a lot of the programs you hear about, like golden visa programs, for example, like in Portugal and Spain, Greece, you have those same language requirements. And for some people that's not a big deal, and for other people they're like, oh, I'll never ever be able to do that. And we all have different abilities. If you get to that point and you can't pass the citizenship program, it's not the end of the world. They're not going to kick you out, but you're just then left with permanent residence, which means come live there as long as you want, but you don't have the right to vote, and you can't pass that status on to children. So that's really the distinction. The Caribbeans all pretty much speak English, so you don't have a language issue. Malta's English speaking. They have a direct citizenship program. If you look around the world, a lot of the programs a lot of the countries that sort of advertise and market these types of programs tend to be English speaking, sort of British Commonwealth. That's really an idea and a concept that grew from those types of countries.
All right, a really stupid question. Can I get a passport, a second passport, without becoming a citizen or a resident?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The 99.9% of the time, if my math is correct, the answer is no. I only know of one country that issues passports to non-citizens, and that's the country of Uruguay. So if you go through their investor visa program and become a
Okay.
resident, they'll give you a passport, which is, essentially a travel document. But again, you can't vote. For everybody else, that is the actual distinction. If you're a resident, you're going to have some little card, or you're going to have a stamp in your passport, your home country passport, but you're not going to have a passport from that country
Okay.
until you become a citizen. And then normally once you've naturalized, then immediately after you've naturalized and you get a certificate of naturalization, you can turn around 5 minutes later and apply for a passport. So
Excellent.
most of the instant passport programs, we fill out all the paperwork ahead of time, and normally when you get it back from the government, from the local agents in the countries like Dominica or St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla, those types of countries, will get the naturalization certificate and the passport, really at the same time.
Good. I just feel like, and I could be wrong, but I just feel like it's very wise for folks to get that second passport. And I'll tell you why. I know this, that some members of the U.S. Senate on the Democrat side of the aisle have bandied about the idea of lifting people's passports if they have a confrontation with the IRS. Well,
that is already in place. If the IRS claims, they don't have to prove. If the IRS claims that you owe them more than $50,000, which, to some people, that sounds like an enormous amount of money. But if they say that you owe them, let's say, $15,000 from 5 years ago that you didn't pay, with penalties and interest, they could easily say that you owe them $50,000 now. So without even proving that or going through the process, they just have to allege it. They can have your passport frozen. And, a lot of people, when I'm at conferences, I ask people if they have their passports there, and frequently they do, because it's in a foreign venue. I make them turn to the very back of the passport where there's actually a statement. I wish I had my passport here handy. And the statement basically says, this is the property of the United States government. It's not your property. Even though you paid for it, it's not yours. Even though it's your image, it's not yours. And it says, and it must be tendered upon demand to any competent government agency. So yeah, you basically, it's like you're renting your passport from the U.S. government. And it's maybe not a bad idea to have another one. Again, most people, they get it for, a rainy day or something they hope never happens, kind of like buying insurance. You're not buying insurance because you plan to die tomorrow. You plan to keep living, but it's good to have it. And I think a lot of people view second passports really that same way.
Great analogy. All right, let's talk a little bit about, I appreciate it. I think you've covered the waterfront on the second passport, folks. Seriously consider.
There is one other very important element, and that is
right?
Under U.S. law, you can't expatriate or give up your U.S. citizenship unless you have another citizenship. You can't say, hey, I don't want to be a U.S. person anymore, give up your passport and become stateless. You can't do that. So for people who are, and it's a very, very, very small percentage, but there are, I think last year there were about 10,000 Americans who gave up their citizenship. And for them to be able to do that, you would have to have a second citizenship first. So, keep that comment is really only for a 0.000% of your viewers. But, if you're even in the back of your mind thinking that that's a possibility, you can't do it if you don't have a second passport. So that's, I think those are the main reasons that, people would consider doing that.
Unbelievable. It's like saying I can't divorce my wife without her permission. I don't get it.
You can't marry another wife without getting divorced.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, let's talk. You are one of the people whose economic analysis I treasure. I value most. what are you telling your people now with the economy continuing in a tailspin? You and I are both big fans of John Williams over at Shadow Stats, and he just published this saying, look, there's the real inflation rate. It's 16%, not 8%. And as you can see, continuing up, people have lost $34 million, I think, in their stock, in their stock holdings average. What are you telling your clients about how to protect their assets in a, I'm sorry, but a falling economy?
Yeah, I mean, surprising, one of the asset classes that's done well in the short run has been, cash. It's been the dollar, particularly vis-a-vis other currencies. And what some economists believe is what actually happens is we export our issues and problems to other countries that can really handle them the least. So yes, US inflation is up X, but you go to some poor African country and it's up, 10X. And it's
Right.
the response to what's happening. I mean, I'm here in Austria, and the Germanic countries, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, have probably fared the best, where they've really worked hard to keep inflation under control. It's sort of low 3, 4, 5% range, which is relatively good compared to most other countries. And with the exception of energy, which of course they can't control, we're seeing our utility bills going up a good bit here. But the point I'm trying to make is that inflation here is up 3 or 4 or 5%, but the euro, which is their base currency, is down almost 20% against the dollar. So if you think about that, in the US, you're looking at, we talked about this before, the official inflation versus the real inflation. The real inflation is probably in the 20-25% range. And then, like for my mom, who's, 84-year-old woman on Social Security, she's happy to get a 6 or 7% cost of living adjustment. But the reality is, that 6 or 7% increase against a 25% cost increase is pretty tough to swallow. I mean, you really have to be very vigilant. But what I've noticed here in Europe is that the inflation in local currency has been more than offset. I mean, it's actually gotten significantly better. So yes, I noticed that the euro prices are higher, but I'm getting, for my dollars, I'm getting 20-25% more euros than I was getting a year ago. So that's a very interesting phenomenon. We're seeing that happen in other countries too. Latin America, like countries like Nicaragua, the local currency, the Cordoba, and other currencies that aren't pegged to the dollar, like for example the Belize dollar, or in Ecuador and Panama and El Salvador, where they actually use dollars. Then the inflation is the inflation and the dollar is the dollar. But when you go to other currencies right now, you have this sort of artificial, almost like artificial subsidy, because inflation's gone up, but the dollar's gone up more. So it's actually made things relatively cheaper. By the way, I don't believe that that's going to last. I think here in Europe, it's largely due to the conflict in Ukraine and people, fleeing the war zone, trying to put money. The dollar interest rates have gone up more than the European interest rates, so people are fleeing the euro to try to get a little bit more return on their money. I think that pendulum will swing back the other way. So, you asked what I'm telling my clients. Hey, this is a great time to think about, maybe investing some of your portfolio abroad. Again, you don't have to. People immediately think, oh my gosh, that must be so risky to invest abroad. No, it's absolutely no more risky than investing down the street at Charles Schwab. You can find the exact corollary of whatever you like in the US, in other places like Europe. So if you're a very conservative investor and you want to be in, bank stocks, and you say, well, I own, Bank of America stock or Citibank. Okay, great. Come to Europe and buy, UBS, buy Credit Suisse, buy Deutsche Bank. You're going to have some of the largest, you're going to have some of the largest banks and the safest banks out there, and they're going to be paying you similar kind of dividend returns, but they're paying you those returns in euros or in Swiss francs. So now you're a little bit more diversified away from the dollar. So, we're telling clients to look at opportunities in addition to traditional investments, stocks and bonds and mutual funds. There's real estate. I think, again, that's a great way to take advantage of the dollar, the strength of the dollar, whether you're buying in Latin America. I think we talked before about a project we've just recently taken on in the Azores in Portugal. I mean, Portugal is amazingly cheap place to live. So, people that are feeling the pinch where, they're saying, gosh, my lifestyle is really being affected because, with this inflation in the US, I mean, you have another choice, and that's move someplace where your dollar is going to get you more bang for the buck. If you have money to invest, but if you don't have money to invest, then you can live somewhere cheaper. And in the past, we've always talked about Latin America, but now, I'm totally happy throwing Portugal, Spain, Greece, sort of the Southern European tier countries back in the mix because it's gotten really so much cheaper there, even in the last year.
So you have both the stronger dollar and the lower property prices. So you get an incredible double benefit, whether it's in, as you say now, the Europe or anywhere in Latin America. Tremendous value for your dollar.
And like here, for example, in Austria, there's no real estate property tax, which is nice because, they have other ways of taxing, they're income based. And so, one of the criticisms of the US is that our property tax system forces elderly people in their retirement years, it forces them to sell their property when maybe they'd really rather just, live in their property until they die, but they can't because they don't have the active income to afford the high property taxes. So in a country like Austria, you really own your home. It's, you can go away for 10 years. Nobody's going to take it. There's no, eviction proceeding because you haven't paid your property taxes. So all those things, strong dollar, lower real estate prices, Latin America specifically, lower cost of living, lower labor wages, where you can hire a maid, a gardener, a driver, those types of things. I mean, you have the same thing in Honduras, in Costa Rica, and Belize, where, you can really create a very wonderful lifestyle for yourself. You don't have to go out to eat in a restaurant every night if you have a cook who spends, 8 hours a day, preparing you, meals from organic foods and things like that. And you get to the end of the month and you're like, wow, that whole thing cost me, the equivalent of going out to eat twice at a restaurant, So when you start comparing that, I think, you'll find that's sort of an individual way that you can combat inflation.
And it is just, we always tell people in the Latin American countries, you can live for about a third to a quarter of what you do in the US. And you don't have to worry about the government coming in and saying, and for instance, Pennsylvania, I think the number one reason people lose their homes in Pennsylvania, the elderly, is they didn't have the money to pay the property, the school tax, which many times is much more than the house payment would be. So no matter how you look at it, Joel, what you just described, living the good life at a great price, as we say at the Offshore Club, it is a tremendous advantage. Let's finish up.
There's only,
what were you going to say?
There's only two ways you can improve your life. I said there's only two ways to improve your life: either make more or spend less. And for those who are still actively working, investing, we call that the offense, right? We want to figure out how we can maximize our income, our investments. And I spend a lot of time working with clients in that area. But then you have the other side of the coin, which is defense. But when you get some people, particularly elderly people who are retired, they can't really play offense that much anymore. They're really, they are where they are. And so defense becomes really important. And, I think you're doing a great service helping people to locate and take advantage of places where they really can live a good life. I mean, I know there's, I hate to say it, but it's it's almost propagandistic, when you hear these things that, the America is the greatest. And I mean, I love America. I do, we deep down in my heart. But to say it's, it's the best, it's the only place to live, there are plenty of people, millions of Americans, in fact, who found their own places to live where they really have a better quality of life for a lot less money. So I think you're doing a great service helping people find that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. One more item, very, very important, an update on this, the President's Week. It's coming up now, less than a month away, right? Yeah, a little less than a month away. Absolutely everything we've talked about, the financial situation, second passports, everything, people can find out about it this in Electrifying Conference, as we call it on this page. Give us an update on what's happening with the President's Week Conference, Joel.
Well, it's really actually quite humbling, the turnout we've had, both with fantastic speakers and also with people just calling every day to register and say, hey, we can't really miss this. We want to be there. It's not just people that live in the West that can easily get to Vegas. I have, people flying in from, other countries, but certainly from the East Coast of the US, Florida, New York, all across Chicago. I mean, it's going to be people literally from everywhere there. Some fantastic speakers. Our keynote speaker this year, Buck Sexton, who's is quite well known. He's sort of a up and comer in the conservative libertarian circles. He's
Absolutely
the successor to Rush Limbaugh, and he has a program on the EIB network from 12 to 3 p.m. every day, and is listened to by millions and millions of people on 400 channels. And he's excited to come, and understand he not only wants to speak, but he wants to hang around and pick up some of the knowledge that we're sharing and working with there. My good friend Porter Stansberry, I think he's making his fifth appearance at President's Week. This is our 26th year. So he doesn't come every year, but we're always happy when he can get free. And he always has very, very provocative, very timely investment advice for people. So
brilliant man.
We can't afford to not, meet and hear what he has to say. One of my good friends, Franco Harris from the Pittsburgh Steelers, is going to be joining us. He's pushed back a little bit on whether he's going to speak or not. I think he will. He just has to kind of get in his mind that he really has something to share. He's not only, a wonderful ex-professional athlete, but he's a very, very successful business person.
Exactly.
Deals with all the same things all of us are dealing with: rising costs, rising labor, squeezing margins, and how to keep his business profitable. It's his company is a nationwide company called Super Bakery, and they make nutritional products for schools, for the military, and for other institutions, hospitals, and things like that. So it's really a pretty interesting business. And then there's just going to be a lot of people from all over the world, from the UK. Edward Downpatrick, he's a member of the royal family, is going to be joining us. He has like 16 names, but he just goes for his friends. They just call him Eddie. I think you'll love what he has to say, particularly with what's going on right now, in the UK. Egon von Greiritz is one of the most known talking heads in the gold space. He's from Matterhorn Asset Management in Gold, Switzerland, based in Geneva. He'll be with us. Pierre Gabris from Geneva, Switzerland. He's a U.S. SEC licensed investment advisor based in Geneva, and he really takes a very interesting world perspective. Some of the things that you and I talk about, a little bit on this program, but that's really his area of expertise. And it goes on and on. My good friend Mike Cobb, who's really the premier authority on international real estate.
Absolutely.
And all in all, there's over 20 speakers. It's a little over 4 days, and it includes cocktail parties and meals and coffee breaks and breakout sessions, and it's unlike any other conference you've ever been to. I mean, I speak at conferences all over the world, and normally there's this big divide. The speakers are up on the stage. With the lights and the cameras, and the audience is sitting down, and the shadows. And that's not how President's Week is. It's very interactive. Most of the sessions are set up kind of like a giant Knights of the Round Table, and we're really more facilitators. The speakers are throwing out concepts and walking the group through whatever their area of expertise is. But there's a lot of back and forth, give and take. So, and as I think I mentioned last week, we're very happy to have our celebrity MC this year, the famous president of the Offshore Club, coming to President's Week. So we're excited to have
Excellent.
you
I
there.
can't wait.
I know you'll have a lot, and sure people from the Offshore Club will be looking forward to meeting you in person.
And it's a terrific conference. I think you use the word electrifying. It's also pivotal. Never been more important than it is now. Great gathering of minds, and I can't wait to be there. And I know I'm here. I had a appointment with a PT, physical therapy yesterday for a pinched nerve in my neck, and when I told him about it, he said, "How do I sign up?" It was it's that. But remember, folks, and Joel, I think it's still true. Only 50 people, right?
Yeah, that's it. 50 attendees, and we're closing in on that number. So if you're interested, certainly let us know. The last thing I'll just say, sometimes people will say, "Hey, we want you to predict the future," and of course, we can't really predict the future. But the reason that we have the conference when we do at this time of the year in November is it's always immediately after the presidential election, or in this case, the by-election, the Senate, the House. Even in the odd years, where there's judges and local, governors, it does have an impact. It has an impact on our country. It has an impact in the way that we're going. So we'll have some really fantastic political commentators there who will share with us, the tea leaves, the way they see them, and they'll be able to see the future a lot clearer once the election happens. So that's why, some people are like, well, why don't you do it, earlier in the fall? We always want to wait and do it immediately after the election. So, we can help to, kind of put out there for people what we think is realistically going to happen.
Vitally important. This is a vitally important election, which makes this conference all the more vitally important. Joel, thank you, sir. This has been great.
Carter,
on all three topics, we covered the waterfront. So thank you. Thank you very mumuch. And I know it's evening over there where you are, so go get some dinner. And folks, sign up. Sign up. Just, you can write to me at caribcarter7@gmail.com. The number, there we go. Thanks, Gary. And I'll make sure that you get top priority because I want to see you there. So, folks, as I tell you every week, let's do this thing.